Welcome to the Authoritative Coach podcast. My name's Chris Marr. In these episodes, in this podcast, I am going to be sharing with you tips, techniques, the questions, the things, the tools, everything that I have built up over the last 10, 12 years as a They Ask You Answer digital sales and marketing coach to share with you so that you can be the best leader you can be, the best coach you can be, and also so that you can really become the best communicator that you can be too. In this first episode of the Authoritative Coach podcast, we're going to be talking about the most powerful two-word question that every coach, every leader should be using in their conversation with clients and with their team members and in high-stakes situations. Let's get into it. There were really two moments in my life that I can remember that were significant in helping me understand the power of questions. One goes back to my early 20s as a young manager, and I remember being part of this train the trainer type program that I was participating in, learning how to be a leader, learning how to be a manager. In fact, the person that ran that program over 20 years ago is still a friend of mine today. And I had to present something. I think I was doing food hygiene or something to do with in the hospitality space. And when I was teaching it, the idea was I would teach a segment, and then the teacher, Ian, he would give me some feedback. And the dry run, he gave me feedback, and he literally just said, "Look, this is great. Just ask more questions." And I don't remember actually at the time understanding why I should ask more questions. I don't think he explained that to me at the time. But it's when I actually performed it, I got them to tell me the answers to the questions and what they were doing. And of course, I don't even know then if I understand why all of that was important. It just made for a better, more engaged presentation, right? Everybody else was speaking. They were speaking more than me. It was a discussion, a conversation. It just felt better. And so that sort of stuck with me. And I remember that very clearly, like this idea of just asking more questions. But there was no real substance to it, right? I didn't really fully understand the why behind it. Many, many years later, I remember, this goes, I think, probably about 10 or 15 years later, working with Marcus Sheridan for the first time, really going into the depths of communication. So looking at Marcus on the stage and when he's facilitating his workshops. In fact, there's a little bit of a backstory here. I remember when the first time I booked Marcus to speak in the UK was in 2014. And he came over to the UK and he said, "Look, Chris, I'm going to run this content marketing workshop here, this They Ask You Answer workshop. You know all of this stuff already. For you, just watch how I do it." And I was like, okay. So I'm watching how he does it. I'm like, how does he do it? Like asking all these questions, the audience participation. It's like he's not giving away the answers. They have to discover the answers for themselves. All of this is happening. Again, I'm observing it, but I didn't really know the why, the purpose behind it until the next year when Marcus came over and actually did workshop on how to actually do this properly, right? We called it world-class communication at the time. And one of the exercises he did was he said, "Look, I'm going to do this segment, okay? I'm going to perform this segment in front of you all as if I was doing it to like a marketing or sales audience. And I want you to count up how many questions I ask in this one segment." And so he runs the segment. The segment is less than 10 minutes. And I'm scribbling all the questions down. And there was literally 20 questions in there. And this was about, it was just one of those moments where I just remember how powerful it is to teach somebody something in a way that which they can learn it for themselves. And if they get there themselves, they're more likely to own it, take responsibility for it, feel like they truly understand it because it's their version of that learning. And so it's this massive shift and difference between telling people what they need to know and helping them to discover it for themselves. And so that's a big part of where, for me, the obsession really about where questions come from, why I should use questions in the work that I do, And I always come back to that, just thinking, what's the questions I need to ask to help somebody understand this for themselves? It's not about what I know. It's about helping them to know and understand it for themselves. So questions are an obsession. I get them from lots of different places. I try to think about what questions I need to ask. The books I read, all the content I'm reading and watching, and that's a great question. I'm going to take that. I'm going to find a place to use that makes sense. I'm going to try it myself. I'm going to use it and come up with my own versions of it, come up with my own use cases for it. And so for example, today the question that I'm going to share with you is lifted straight out of a book, but applied in a different context, but it still works. In fact, not only does it still work, it's probably the most powerful question. And that's exactly where I want to start this season of the podcast is, and what's the most powerful question today that I know that I would use, and I want to share that with you today. And so I've been swiping and saving and curating questions from loads of different places for many, many years now, and this continues to be something that increases in value for me. Like, questions become the value in the work that I do as a coach, and that's for coaching clients and coaching other coaches too. It's always about the question. What's the question that I want to ask here that's going to start the conversation that we need to have? And of course, I think one of the things that holds a lot of people back from this technique, this questioning technique, is that they think they need to have all the questions laid out. They have to have like some sort of structure or formula. That's actually not really the way to approach this. Having the first question, I think, is important, but you need to then be able to respond in the moment to what the other person is saying or the other people are saying. And that is then where, your training kicks in. And we'll talk about this as we go through the podcast this season, in season 1. The question and then you responding to the answer is where the magic really happens, and when you start to build that relationship with the people that you're working with. And so every time someone's communicating with me, they're saying something, they're explaining something, they're telling me the problems or the challenges they're having, the question I'm thinking to myself internally is, why are they telling me this? Why are they saying this to me? Why are they sharing this with me? And what's the question that I need to ask here that's going to help me understand better what's going on for this person in this moment? And so this is why this question is so powerful. This is literally the shortest, most powerful question, certainly, that I've ever come across. And the question is, why now? Why now? Or why do this now? And I'm going to give you some use cases from this, but I've literally pulled this from The Choice by Edith Eger. And it's on page 4. This is page 4 of the book. You're not even anywhere close to getting into the depths of this book yet, and you've already got something valuable from it. And I'm going to read a section from the book, a small paragraph here from the book that talks about why she asks this question. And so it says, "Why now?" I asked. "This was my secret weapon. The question I always ask my patients on a first visit. I need to know why they are motivated to change. Why today, of all days, do they want to start working with me? Why is today different from yesterday, different from last week, or different from last year? Why is today different from tomorrow? Sometimes our pain pushes us, and sometimes our hope pulls us. Asking why now isn't just asking a question, it's asking everything." And so Edith's context here is therapy or psychotherapy. For us as leaders and coaches, you think to yourself, well, why would you ask a question like this? What's the use case here for you? And so there's loads of different places to use this. So some examples of where I use this where it's powerful, where it matters, is when I'm meeting a prospective client or a prospective coach that I'm working with for the first time. Why now? Why do this now? And so the key dynamic here changes or shifts. Oftentimes, most people are trying to convince the other person, why they should be working with them, right? So if I'm the salesperson and you're the prospective client, I start going on a monologue about all the reasons why you should be working with me and all the benefits and the features of the product and the service. Whereas if you ask why now, it puts it onto the other person to convince you and prove to you why they should be doing this work. And it's almost like by getting someone to articulate why now, it gets them to sort of realize just how important this work is that they want to do with you. And if you do it well, you can really get them to articulate things that perhaps they haven't articulated to people before. And what I know to be true is as soon as someone's starting to share things with you that you haven't shared with anyone before, is that's going to build trust rapidly in the relationship that you have with that person. So why now? Why do this now? It works with clients, it works with prospective clients and services, but it also works really well whenever somebody's trying to do something new. So let's say you're having a one-to-one as a leader with someone in your team, and they're like, I want to do this thing. I want to learn how to be better here. I want to learn how to do this to advance my career. Why now? Why is this important now? Why do this now? And it gets them to think a bit more deeply about the choices they're making. And it does what I call, it raises the stakes around it all. It makes it feel more important, which leads to them feeling more committed to the thing that they want to do, and or makes them realize that actually the thing that I want to do isn't as important as I thought it was, and actually this is not a great decision for me to make. And so either way, it ends up in a good place, right? It gets someone to move forward and move through it. And so by asking why now, we get people to articulate what's important to them, why they want to do this. And they have to, through asking the question to get them to convince you, they in turn convince themselves as well. So it's a really powerful question to use. It's really short. The best way to use it is just to say, so why now? So why do this now? And then shut up, let them talk it out, and then look out for moments where you want to dig a little bit deeper and understand a little bit better. Other questions you might want to ask here are things like, so tell me a little bit more about why that's important. And if we were able to do that, what kind of impact would that have for you? And so you're really trying to get them to really dig in to why this work is important to do now. It clearly works in therapy, if we're looking at Edith's example in psychotherapy, but it works in any time where you're leading or coaching or working with people, and it raises the stakes and gets that commitment from people right from the start. Truly important question to ask. So if you haven't used this question before, or you've maybe used it without really thinking about it, try and use it much more deliberately. Think about when is it the right time to ask a question like this, where I can get the response that I'm really looking for, and then integrate it into your work. So like I said, sales processes, one-to-ones with team members, when you're working with, you can even use it with groups or people like that, or if you're trying to get people onto your coaching program or anything like that, it's a really great question to ask where you can get people to articulate why they want to do this. So use it today, find a place to use it. And if you get some interesting results or breakthroughs from it, then you can always email me or message me and let me know what came from asking this question and integrating into the work that you do. All the links to everything, including the book and other places where you can get other resources from me on coaching questions and coaching techniques, all in the show notes for you. Go click on those links, connect with me, and I'll see you next time.